At the age of 70, Grandfather Park found himself at a pivotal point in his life, reflecting on the various living arrangements he had experienced over the years. Despite trying different options, living with his children, hiring a caregiver, and staying in a nursing home, he found none of them offered the comfort and autonomy he sought. Each experience left him feeling unfulfilled, yearning for a sense of independence and true care. However, in this new chapter, Grandfather Park discovered a living arrangement that not only provided the necessary support, but also honored his desire for self-reliance. His journey highlights the emotional challenges seniors face and offers valuable insights into aging, caregiving, and the importance of relationships in later years. Reflecting on life's changes. As Grandfather Park reached his 70th birthday, he couldn't help but reflect on the paths his life had taken. The years leading up to this milestone had been marked by both joy and sorrow, with some of his most difficult challenges taking place in the recent past. During his younger years, he and his spouse had formed a close-knit and loving bond. The two of them shared everything, especially the task of caring for one another in times of illness. Hospital visits were often filled with laughter and camaraderie, and no matter how difficult the situation, they found comfort in one another's presence. But the death of his beloved spouse shattered this comforting routine, and with it, the security he had once taken for granted. The once joyful hospital visits became a source of dread. He now found himself going through the motions of medical appointments alone, facing long and exhausting waits that drained him both physically and emotionally. The vitality he once had began to fade, and each visit to the hospital seemed to take him one step closer to the inevitable. While he still had children who loved him dearly, they too were immersed in their own lives. He tried to avoid being a burden, resisting the urge to ask for help. This decision, born out of love and the desire to shield them from any additional strain, ironically led to a situation where his children became more involved in his care than they should have. He found himself caught in a cycle of dependency, and the guilt of relying on them only added to the emotional weight he carried. The caregiver dilemma. One of the most poignant moments in Grandfather Park's story occurred during a routine trip to the market. On this day, fate took a cruel turn. He stumbled and fell, causing a serious injury that required hospitalization. The doctor's recommendation was clear. He needed a minimum of 6 months to recuperate. His children, concerned for his well-being, proposed a solution to this problem. The plan was for him to alternate between staying with his son and daughter, spending 3 months at each of their homes. Though this arrangement was intended to offer Grandfather Park a sense of family care and support, it quickly became apparent that it was not the solution he had hoped for. He felt like an outsider in both of his children's homes, despite their best efforts to make him feel welcome. It was as if he no longer truly belonged in either place. This realization led him to reflect on a truth that had been evident to him for some time. A parent's home is always the children's home, but a children's home can never truly be the parent's home. This feeling of alienation became a constant companion. No matter how much his children tried to accommodate him, he couldn't shake the deep-seated loneliness that seemed to permeate every aspect of his life. He found himself eating alone in his room while his children gathered together in the kitchen or living room, talking and laughing, leading lives that felt increasingly distant to him. The emotional distance he felt from them, coupled with the isolation he experienced, left him feeling as though he had become invisible in his own family. The struggles of living alone. After spending several months in his children's homes, Grandfather Park felt an overwhelming need to return to his own house, the place where he had spent so many years of his life. Despite the increasing pain from his leg injury and the recognition of his limitations, he longed to reclaim his autonomy. His home, though small, was filled with memories of a life well lived. It was his sanctuary, a place where he could continue to live on his own terms, surrounded by the artifacts and relics of a life he had once shared with his spouse. However, returning to his home was not without its challenges. His recent injury reminded him of his growing physical frailty. Tasks that had once been simple, like grocery shopping, had now become monumental efforts. Every trip to the market left him exhausted, his legs throbbing in pain, his body drenched in cold sweat. The toll of aging was becoming more apparent with each passing day, and Grandfather Park realized that his independence came at a cost. The decision to hire a caregiver. Reluctantly, Grandfather Park made the difficult decision to hire a caregiver. It was a choice that weighed heavily on him, especially given his already limited financial resources. His pension was modest, and he couldn't help but feel guilty about burdening his children further, even though they contributed what little they could to support him. The caregiver's monthly salary of 500,000 won was a significant financial strain, but it was necessary for his continued well-being. Yet, the reality of hiring a caregiver came with its own set of challenges. Grandfather Park's limited budget meant that he couldn't provide the caregiver with lavish meals or luxurious accommodations. The meals he prepared were simple, and though they filled his stomach, they were far from nourishing in the way that meals in wealthier households might be. Unfortunately, this scarcity became a point of contention between him and the caregivers he hired. Many of them left after just a few days, unable to adapt to the simple meals and the austere conditions of his home. The caregivers often complained about the food, which they described as too sparse to sustain them throughout their demanding work. They likened the meals to rabbit feed, unable to sustain the energy required to provide quality care. Worse still, even the agencies that supplied caregivers hesitated to send anyone his way. They sensed that the conditions in his home were less than ideal, making long-term caregiving a difficult proposition. The strain of aging and the emotional toll. The combination of physical pain, financial strain, and emotional isolation was beginning to take its toll on Grandfather Park. He found himself questioning the decisions he had made in the past, wondering if there was a better way to navigate his twilight years. The guilt he felt about relying on his children, the loneliness he experienced despite their best intentions, and the constant struggle to maintain his dignity in a world that seemed to forget the elderly. All of these factors combined to create a deep sense of sorrow. His emotional distress was further compounded by his sense of invisibility. In the eyes of society, he had become a relic of the past, an aging figure whose needs were seen as a burden rather than a reflection of the richness of his life. The world seemed to have little space for the elderly, and the lack of empathy and understanding from those around him left him feeling more isolated than ever before. Despite all of these challenges, however, Grandfather Park continued to persevere. His story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the importance of independence, and the deep emotional bonds that sustain us throughout our lives. It also underscores the need for society to recognize and address the struggles that the elderly face. It is only through genuine empathy, thoughtful planning, and creative solutions that we can ensure that aging remains a process of growth, not a path toward isolation. A new reality, the burden of loss. Losing a spouse after many years of marriage is, without a doubt, one of life's most devastating experiences. The grief that follows is immeasurable, as the person who had once been the foundation of daily existence is suddenly gone. For Grandfather Park, this loss was more than just an emotional blow. It marked the beginning of a new phase of his life, one that was defined by solitude and a stark confrontation with his own vulnerability. Without his wife by his side, the simple act of going to the hospital for a checkup, something that had once been a shared experience, became a source of anxiety and dread. "I remember how different things were when my spouse was still with me," he reflects with a sense of wistfulness. "We made a promise to each other, to always rely on one another, to care for each other in sickness and in health. Hospital visits were filled with laughter and camaraderie. We made the best of even the most difficult moments." But when his wife passed away, everything changed. Hospital visits became a dark cloud hanging over him, one that filled him with dread each time he needed to seek medical care. The weight of loneliness and the absence of his spouse's comforting presence made each visit feel infinitely more burdensome. His frail body, already dealing with the aches and pains of age, was further drained by the exhaustion of navigating hospital corridors and waiting rooms. The loss of his wife had stripped him of the sense of security he once had, and in its place he felt a deep, almost unbearable sense of isolation. The unspoken strain of family relationships. Despite having children who love him dearly, Grandfather Park felt a sense of discomfort whenever he had to rely on them for help. His children, though caring, were caught up in the whirlwind of their own busy lives, which left him feeling like a burden whenever he asked for assistance. This sense of guilt, of not wanting to inconvenience his children, of not wanting to impose on them, was a heavy cross to bear. But it was a cross that many elderly individuals find themselves carrying, one that often leads to feelings of loneliness and a yearning for independence. "I love my children, but I couldn't bear to ask them for help too often," Grandfather Park admits. "It was a constant struggle. They were busy with their own lives, and I didn't want to add to their burdens. But the truth was, I needed help more than I was willing to admit." It was during this period of inner conflict that he found himself in a situation that further highlighted the emotional distance between himself and his children. After an unfortunate fall while shopping at the market, he was hospitalized and required several months of recovery. His children, eager to assist, proposed a solution. He would alternate between staying at his son's and daughter's homes for 3 months at a time. While this arrangement seemed practical on the surface, it left Grandfather Park feeling increasingly alienated and out of place. Every meal he ate felt like a reminder of his isolation. Eating alone in his room while his children gathered in the kitchen, laughing and chatting, felt like a cruel mockery of the closeness they once shared. Despite the physical comfort of a roof over his head, the emotional and psychological strain was undeniable. Seeking independence in the face of adversity. After months of feeling like an outsider in his own family, Grandfather Park made the decision to return to his own home. It was a small place, far from luxurious, but it was his. It was a space filled with memories and familiar routines that offered him a sense of comfort and control over his own life. Yet, even in the familiarity of his home, he was not immune to the challenges of aging. His physical health was in decline, and the simple task of running errands like grocery shopping had become an insurmountable challenge. The pain in his legs, a constant reminder of his frailty, made even the shortest walk feel like a monumental effort. At the same time, he felt the burden of his limited financial resources weighing on him. His pension, though steady, was hardly enough to cover the costs of hiring a caregiver to assist with household tasks. Thus, he resorted to a frugal lifestyle, settling for meager meals and doing what he could to make ends meet. However, fate intervened in the form of a small but impactful change. The arrival of an online grocery service in his neighborhood was a godsend. He no longer had to endure the painful walks to the market, and his daughter was kind enough to assist with ordering groceries online. The convenience of this service brought a sense of relief, as it alleviated the physical strain that had been a constant in his life. But what truly made this arrangement special was the connection he forged with the young couple who ran the small mart near his apartment. Over time, the young couple became more than just business acquaintances. They noticed Grandfather Park's struggles with mobility and went out of their way to assist him. They carried his groceries up to his apartment and, in doing so, brought a sense of warmth and kindness into his life. Their genuine care for him blossomed into a meaningful friendship, and Grandfather Park began to feel a sense of belonging again. Their companionship provided him with the emotional support he had longed for, and the simple acts of kindness, carrying his bags, chatting with him, made his days brighter. The idea that changed everything. One fateful day, as Grandfather Park was picking up his usual groceries, he overheard a conversation between the young couple. They were arguing about money, about how to best allocate their meager resources to provide for their young child. The wife had bought a durian for their child, despite the fact that it strained their already tight budget. The husband was concerned about their financial situation and feared they wouldn't be able to pay for their daughter's school fees if they kept indulging in such luxuries. Grandfather Park, having lived through his own financial struggles, couldn't help but empathize with the young couple. He understood the delicate balance between desire and necessity, and the worries about the future that loomed large for them. And then an idea struck him, a solution that would benefit everyone involved. He approached the young couple with a proposal. He offered them a fixed monthly payment to come to his home and assist with simple household tasks: laundry, tidying up, and preparing 2 basic meals a day. His offer was not just a transaction. It was a way to alleviate their financial strain while allowing him to maintain some level of independence and dignity in his old age. He reassured them that the work would not be demanding and that it would give them some financial relief. At first, the young couple hesitated. They were reluctant to accept money from someone they considered a friend. But Grandfather Park insisted, emphasizing that he genuinely wanted to help. After a few discussions, they finally agreed to the arrangement. A daughter's struggle. My daughter, now in her late 50s, has spent most of her adult life caring for others. First for me, when I was healthy and capable, and now for her husband and son. Her dreams, her hopes, have taken a back seat to the relentless demands of her household. She has become a caregiver, not just for her family members, but for the very man who is supposed to be her partner in life. Instead of experiencing any joy or fulfillment in her years, her life has been consumed by the monotonous cycles of commuting, cooking, and cleaning, which leave her with little time or energy to nurture her own well-being. It pains me deeply to watch this. The woman who should have known happiness has instead become entangled in a life defined by sacrifice and duty. Her marriage, which was supposed to offer comfort and love, has become a battleground. My son-in-law, despite his many shortcomings, has a manipulative streak that he uses to keep her bound to him. His behavior has turned abusive over the years, and when my daughter has mustered the courage to voice her desire for a divorce, he responds with violence, silencing her hopes for escape. His tactics are chillingly effective. He knows she is alone in our home, without anyone to defend her, and in his twisted way, this isolation fuels his cruelty. My daughter, who deserves to live a life free of fear, is trapped. The dynamic between them is suffocating, and there are moments when I wish I could step in and protect her, but I am powerless. Aside from me, an elderly man who has been rendered physically incapable of standing up to anyone, there is no one in her corner. My grandson, now in his 20s, has grown up in this environment, surrounded by tension and fear. He has never witnessed what a healthy relationship looks like, and unfortunately, this has stifled his ability to stand up for his mother, who is in desperate need of support. My own struggles. A new reality. As if witnessing my daughter's suffering were not enough, I am now confronted with my own frailty. My wife, who was my rock and my partner, passed away years ago. We had always relied on each other for strength, managing to weather life's storms together. But since her passing, I have felt more alone than ever. Last year, a devastating stroke left me with paralysis on the right side of my body, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the reality that my life would never be the same. The rehabilitation was long and painful, and though I made progress, the loss of my physical capabilities left me feeling vulnerable and helpless. The stroke was not just a medical event. It was a life-altering experience that made me confront the limits of my existence. The grief of losing my wife, combined with the added weight of this new disability, created a profound sadness that seemed inescapable. There were days when I could not stop crying, grieving not only for the loss of my physical health, but for the dreams I once had for myself and my family. I had always imagined a life where I could continue to provide for my loved ones, especially my daughter, who was now trapped in a situation she couldn't escape from. Financial struggles. A pension that can't provide. I have always prided myself on being independent. I worked hard all my life, contributing to society in my own small way, always ensuring that my family was provided for. But as I entered my golden years, I realized that the financial security I had hoped to enjoy was nothing more than a fleeting dream. My pension, a meager sum of $3,801 each month, barely covers the cost of living. I have saved up just over $1 million, but with the cost of healthcare and the rising prices of essential services, even this sum seems inadequate. The possibility of moving into a nursing home or hiring a caregiver to assist me with daily tasks seems like a distant hope, one that I cannot afford. The financial reality of aging in my country is stark. Many elderly individuals like myself are forced to make difficult decisions when they no longer have the energy or resources to care for themselves. A nursing home costs, at a minimum, $5,000 a month, a sum that I simply cannot afford. Hiring a home caregiver is even more expensive. These high costs leave people like me feeling trapped, with no clear solution for how to navigate the final years of life with dignity. The burden of being a grandfather. To make matters worse, I know that my daughter is in no position to take care of me. She is barely holding on to her own life, let alone the responsibility of caring for me as I age. Even though she retired recently, her role as a caregiver to her husband and son has not lessened. In fact, it has only grown more intense. Her duties at home keep her from living her own life, and I can see how suffocating it has become for her. I do not want to add to her burdens, but I also know that I cannot continue to live alone, reliant on delivery food and small acts of kindness from my grandson. In the early days after my stroke, my grandson would come by occasionally to help me with tasks like taking out the trash or helping me bathe. He would order food for me online, and I would transfer him small amounts of money to cover the costs. But as time passed, I began to sense his growing frustration. One day, he expressed to me that he was struggling to balance his own life and responsibilities with the growing burden I was placing on him. His words stung, and it hurt deeply to realize that I was becoming a source of stress for him, especially since he had his own life to lead, filled with aspirations of dating and possibly marrying. It became clear to me that asking my grandson to continue helping me indefinitely was not fair. He was still young, with his own dreams and ambitions, and I didn't want my needs to stand in the way of his happiness. I had always hoped that in my old age my family would take care of me, as I had taken care of them in their youth. But this, unfortunately, was not a reality that I could count on. The idea that gave me hope. For many sleepless nights, I wrestled with my feelings of helplessness, trying to figure out a way forward. That's when an idea began to form, one that I could hardly believe might work. It was a solution that would not only provide me with the care I desperately needed, but also offer my grandson the opportunity to have his life while still being there for me. I realized that with my savings, I could hire a part-time caregiver to help with basic tasks like meal preparation and laundry. This would cost me just $2,000 a month, which was affordable on my pension. More importantly, I had a better idea for how to live out my last years. Instead of asking my grandson to take on full responsibility for my care, I decided to propose something different. A plan that would allow him to maintain his independence and perhaps even start a family of his own, while still being close enough to provide me with occasional support. The idea was simple. I would transfer the family home to him, and in exchange, I asked for his commitment to live with me, to help with the occasional task, and to be there when I needed him. I could live independently with a part-time caregiver to handle the more demanding tasks, and my grandson could live his life freely, knowing that he was helping me in a way that felt manageable and fair to both of us. This arrangement would not only ensure that I had the support I needed, but also provide him with financial stability. In the end, it was an agreement built on mutual respect and love. I hoped it would be the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship, one where we could find balance and peace in the face of life's challenges.